unless you live on a different planet, you know who Gatorade is, so we're going to not go into all the background stuff, and you kind of have a general sense of what head of digital strategy means. Basically, this guy's a big dog and he knows what he's doing. So I talked about it earlier, man. I want to jump right into it, okay?
Let's do it.
Okay, so when we were catching up a little while ago, you talked to me about a partnership that you guys have with the company named Huddle,
Yes.
right? Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, unlike Gatorade, I'll describe Huddle slightly. It's an amazing startup that's really designed as a social network that's video-based for high school athletes. It allows them to post highlight videos, communicate with their teammates, communicate with their coaches, communicate with their network of athletes and friends to, heroize their time spent playing high school sports. So, awesome platform, cool insight that drove it. Why it matters to us is one of the fundamental issues that Gatorade has as a digital marketing organization, really as a marketer overall, is how do I identify and communicate in a way that matters to known athletes? Right. And the way I'll articulate that struggle a little bit is, the way we generally will go to market now in the digital space, we'll put a demo and a sports interest qualifier on something and go pump out, what we think is really strong creative. That's right. The fundamental issue there is that can just as easily target me as it can target a 17-year-old high school athlete. Right. One of them is significantly more valuable to Gatorade's brand than the other. So we've been able to partner with Huddle in this case and other interesting startups that allow us to do a much better job of delivering messaging and delivering experiences to our core target. We can really drill down to that high school athlete and personalize creative and experiences for them based on what we know about them, what sports they play, where they play, how good they are, what level they play, how committed they are. All of this is known through Huddle's platform. So they've been great for us from a data sharing perspective because they allow us both on and off of their platform to truly be able to target and personalize messaging to known athletes. And then on top of that, as a startup and entrepreneurial driven company that doesn't really make money through ad products, so they're not an advertising driven business, they really push us to integrate into their platform in ways that have value for the user because they care about really curating the user experience that they're developing versus just delivering ad messages because that's not their core business model. Right. So it's been a great partnership for us and really speaks to how we're trying to think more about delivering products and services to athletes in the digital space versus focusing more on campaigns and ad messages.
So when you told me that story, what I love most about it was something we talked about in our closed door session yesterday. We asked a question to the group, which was, how do you convince your internal stakeholders to do something like that sounds and feels like innovation? Mm-hmm. And I can't remember who it was, but some crew of fine people referenced this idea of prototyping, sort of building minimal viable products. When I hear Huddle, a company I've heard of slightly, in Gatorade, a world-renowned entity, I hear prototype. I hear startups. I hear value exchange. Talk to me a little bit about your perspective on when you drive innovation in mobile or any space, how you think about extracting value from partners that may be a bit leaner and want to provide more value to your business.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because, myself and my team are really close to what's going on in the space. Our leadership might not be as close, and the breadth of things that they need to understand and focus on is larger. Yeah. So I think what we've done really well is twofold. First and foremost is come with clear objectives that ladder up to things that they care about. Okay. So in this case, I'll continue to use Huddle as an example. Fair. Right? I can clearly go to them, articulate a problem around media waste tied to not being able to deliver messaging to truly known athletes. Yeah. They get that. And then I can articulate why Huddle helps us do that because of how laser focused their user base is and because of the architecture of the deal that allows for certain levels of data sharing that we need as an organization, right? Very clear objectives that don't feel like digital marketing speak, right? That don't talk about impressions and engagement rates, which fundamentally they don't care about, but speaks to kind of a core challenge that we're trying to solve and that we can leverage Huddle to solve. So first and foremost, being really clear with objectives.
Yeah, give me an example of an objective.
So a perfect example becomes we need to build out and we need to own more of our consumer relationship. Okay. Part of the way that we need to do that is to own the athlete relationship and understand who that athlete is more effectively, and then being able to target them in a more longitudinal way across multiple platforms in order to increase the return we see from our advertising investment.
Yeah.
Huddle helps us do that by providing, as a second-party data source, the athlete data that we need to target users not just on their platform, but holistically on any platform where we'll just match their audience, right? And so that's a very clear way, a very clear use case to articulate. Coming back to the second piece of your question, right, around MVPs. So another issue that we run into constantly, and an easy way of thinking about this is no one's gonna get fired for buying Facebook, right? I can love Facebook. I can spend as much with Facebook as is humanly possible, and no one is going to question that investment.
That's right.
And it's an amazing platform, and we do that. But when we are trying to be more innovative in the way that we think about engaging our consumer base, and when we are trying to build experiences that feel more like products and services, there's more risk there, because there's less history of return. And so what we try to do is mitigate that risk. And part of the way we mitigate that risk is through partnership with startups. So we do a great job of making sports drinks. We might not do the best job, although I think we do a relatively good job, of building experiences that are truly utilitarian for athletes.
Yeah.
So we're looking for startups like Huddle. There are a couple others. Volt Athletics is one that I love, where they're truly building great digital products for athletes. What we're doing is partnering with them to integrate our brand deeply into their product experience and bring some of the sports nutrition expertise that we believe has value to athletes that can augment their platform, and doing that in a way that allows us to mitigate the risk that we're taking on from a development perspective, because these things are already getting built out, while also giving us the upside of having really deep integration into these products that are not advertising-driven businesses, that allow for really true brand integration, and again, for us to bring value to our athlete consumer. So again, that's another way of not having to go to my stakeholders and saying, I need X millions of dollars to develop this thing that may or may not work, but I can go to an ecosystem of startups who are trying to build really cool things for athletes and find the right way to integrate, partner with them, help them build their businesses in a way that helps mitigate the risk that I'm taking on.
What I love about that is how you guys have essentially created new definitions of currency, right? In the sense that in our session yesterday, a lot of what we landed on, Mike, was, dollars, cash. What does that do to inhibit or enhance your strategy around innovation and mobile? What I'm hearing from you is that you guys are thinking of data as currency, right? So my question to you is, what I often hear is first-party data, owned data is the gem, right? Brands are maybe a bit reticent to share their data, to partner and use other folks' data. Tell me about your perspective on own versus lease data and what that means to how you drive innovation in your space.
So, great question. I think about use cases.
Yeah, I love that.
First and foremost, right? Like, data has value if you understand how you want to effectively deploy it to either solve problems or help build your business or build your brand. So we always start with what's the right use case. And so as we think about data that's valuable to us, it always drops into one of two buckets.
Okay.
I care about who's purchasing my product,
Yeah.
and I care about known athletes. Now, sometimes those are the same people. Sometimes they're not. You know, little Jimmy might be, at Pop Warner practice, and mom might be buying the Gatorade. Yeah. They both matter, but we always think about data as a reflection of those two macro segments. And then as we think about how we activate against those segments in the marketplace, we start thinking about what we want to know about those individuals, what attributes matter to us that we can actually activate in the marketplace. And so the ability to build profiles against those segments, including the necessary identifiers for matching, and then the attributes that allow us to segment and then personalize creative, where that data comes from, as long as it's a clean and reputable source that we feel good about, we're less concerned about. Do I want to own everything first party? Sure, I would love to.
Right.
I think that looking at some of our partners, going back to how we've started to work with startups and younger companies, if I had a venture fund that I could go after, and I could build all of this internally so that I own every single piece of data that comes from this massive owned ecosystem of products, similar to how a lot of amazing tech companies do, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
It's not.
We'd be best friends.
It's not pragmatic and viable for us, though, right? So right now, the reality is that I don't own the consumer relationship.
Sure.
I don't own the communication channel. I don't own much of the transactional relationship, frankly. So in lieu of that, as obvious sources of first-party data, let's figure out what are more pragmatic solutions to go solve for my fundamental use cases. Whether that's leveraging third-party data and utilizing multiple sources and understanding what really returns for you, or striking the right partnerships that can deliver second-party sources that I might be the only marketer that has access to. That's fine as well. Do I want to build up the right robust set of owned and operated platforms over time that allow me to more effectively vertically integrate into owning more of the consumer relationship? Absolutely. Right. And we'll continue to work on that. But that's a larger time scale than how do I effectively identify my audience and personalize the right creative messaging for them now. Yeah. So we're doing a combination of looking at how we build for the longer term, but also how we strike the right partnerships to allow data to solve for the use cases that we have now. And so I think that it comes back to identifying the right use cases, identifying the right data sources, and then the right way to deploy. Okay. And depending on who you are as a brand or where you sit, that could be first, second, or third-party sources.
Helpful. I'm a fan of Gatorade.
Appreciate that.
Right? Of course I would say that. Of course I would.
Well, we'll see how much you're actually consuming.
Seriously. But what I mean by that is I'm also a big-time gamer, sadly. How do I do that with 2 kids? I have no idea. But anywho, I'm a gamer, and I was on Xbox. We talked a little bit about this. This was a little while ago. Yep. 2 years ago, and you'll tell me the name of the initiative. It was a performance initiative with Gatorade, with J.J. Watt and Paul George, some of the other athletes. So for those that weren't familiar, what Gatorade had done with this partnership was on Xbox One, using a Kinect, you could actually work out with these athletes. Pretty phenomenal stuff. Imagine having a personal workout session with J.J. Watt or Paul George in your living room, brought to you by Gatorade. The product placement was so native and so natural to it. I raised that one, Mike, because I want to get a little bit of a sense from you on how you can recognize trends that will be good versus the noise. Like, what told you that we should spend money on something like, at the time, a small-scaled reach-based play on Xbox One to reach customers in this experiential way? So how much does culture kind of influence the way that you think about placing your big bets?
So, I mean, the fundamental answer to your question is we don't know.
Yeah, totally.
We're not any better at predicting the future than anyone else is. I think what we try to do culturally is, first and foremost, stay very true to our mission as a brand. we are here to fuel athletic performance. And that's not just a product from a cultural perspective. That can come across in services, in experiences. We need to effectively build an ecosystem of experiences around the core Gatorade sports nutrition products in order to continue to drive loyalty amongst our consumer base and to continue to insulate ourselves from competitive threats. Competitive threats both inside and outside of the core product categories. And so culturally, we're constantly looking for the right ways to deliver experiences to consumers that align with our mission. And so the Xbox play with Connect is a great example of us looking for the right ways to bring elite athletic training to our core high school athletic consumer who's on that platform. Now here's the thing, in retrospect, we probably missed on that one. We probably missed, and I think we've learned a lot from that, which is why we continue to do these types of things, because we learn as an organization. So I'll look back at that right now and say, wait, the core tenet was some kid is gonna work out in his living room following what J.J. Watt does. Maybe not, maybe not. He's gonna move the couch and he's gonna get everything else out of the way and start doing push-ups, I don't know. But I think the underlying idea of how we bring kind of elite training regimes to high school athletes was still right. And we needed to find the right platform to do that. So that's actually a decent amount of the integration that we're building with Volt is around how they don't only provide customized strength and conditioning workouts to athletes, but we augment that with the exact workouts that J.J. Watt, Cam Newton, Dwayne Wade are doing, and help align those to athletes in those sports that might be playing those positions that can learn and gain insight from access to that type of information. Now, that now exists in a mobile application that you can take directly into the gym with you that customizes an entire workout for you, allows you to log it over time and dynamically changes and adjusts as you improve. That's probably a better experience than the move the couch out of the way Connect experience. But we don't get all the way there if we haven't done the work with Connect. And so we're constantly looking for new devices, new platforms where not only are athletes spending time, but we can think differently about the way we engage them and the experiences that we create for them. So by trying to continue to be forward-looking, we can gain a ton of learning that if it doesn't pay back in that experience, we'll pay back in the next one.
When I hear that, it sounds like you guys have a tangible, I'm gonna be wrong, probably, but a tangible 5 to 10 year vision at least, right? So every step you take is aligned towards that vision. And for marketers that are sitting in the room that have short-term sales goals, right? They have to move business every single day. Put me inside of, you're reporting into the CMO and you're talking about how you're delivering on business. Talk to me, try to get specific for me, Mike, on how you are constantly balancing sort of product and marketing. How are you balancing this 5-year, 10-year vision that something like Connect doesn't win on tactically, but it wins on a step and moving you in that direction? How are you balancing that conversation internally with your internal leadership?
It's the constant yin and the yang to some degree. It's something that we're always struggling with, and frankly, there's no. At the end of the day, it's about balance. Right. And I think that you have to have that, and for us, we have tried and true digital strategies that have been successful for us in moving volume against our product portfolio. And we ensure to not just make those investments, but continue to measure their performance, to optimize that performance, and identify the right ways to get smarter. So I'll take you back to, as we were talking about, kind of data segmentation, right? We know that if we build purchase-based audience segments, and go to the right group of partners with the right type of creative message, with the core measurement on the back end that we look to optimize in as close to real time as possible, we can move the volume needle in the short term. And we ensure that we invest a certain amount of our A&M budget against delivering that.
So you're setting budget up front.
Exactly, because we have a responsibility to that, right? Like at the end of the day, I can't put my head in the sand and wait for the brand team to come over to me and say, we're not moving the needle on so-and-so. I have to be responsible for the business. I have to be cognizant of how the business is performing.
That's right.
And I need to ensure the strategies that we're building are lining up to our annual business goals. And frankly, on the PepsiCo side, sometimes quarterly business goals, right? So we'll do that first and foremost. And I think that we're very rigorous in how we identify those campaigns, how we build them, and how we optimize them against core measurement. Now, at the same time, we're looking to squirrel away as much budget as possible to ensure that we can make the right investments against some of the longer term deliverables. And I think, again, that comes back to some of the approach we've taken, some of the partnerships we've made, some of the third parties that we've looked at working with that can help us prepare for that future. It was funny, we were outside at breakfast earlier today and we were talking about how some other sports-based businesses have approached this and how your Under Armours of the world have made billion-dollar bets on acquisition of sports technology companies because they believe that's the future of their business.
Right.
And candidly, like, we're not going to make that bet because we need to ensure that we're being more judicious in the short term and that we're making the right balance of investment against the core needs of our business today while finding the right ways to ensure that it's success tomorrow. And I think that through a lot of the partnerships we've delivered with third parties and smaller startups and some of the other things that we're doing internally to really focus more on products and services for athletes and less on campaign-based ad messages represents that.
I love it. So we're talking a lot about partnerships, and I'd be remiss if I didn't inquire about where your agency partnerships come into play. Okay, so in our dialogue yesterday, one of the things that we talked about, and this is a common thread, we talk about this all the time, is talent. So when you think about where you want to be on this roadmap, let's have a candid chat about are the right people in the right positions, right? So that's question one. And then two, how do you maybe work to create maybe an advisory board of different types of people or different types of agencies and partners to help you deliver on your needs? Because that's essentially, I think, what we're trying to figure out is, are we prepared from a sort of IP and intelligence perspective to prepare ourselves for the future? How are you thinking about talent and what's your next move?
It's a great question, and I think that our agency partners are under pressure right now.
Right.
I think it's a good pressure
Right.
To evolve at the speed of the business and at the speed of our needs. We are constantly pushing our agency partners on the creative side, on the media side, to continue to evolve their businesses, to ensure that our accounts are staffed with the right type of talent to deliver experiences to consumers in the way that we need to do so in the 21st century.
Right.
And we're continuing to push that. And one of the big things that I've pushed our agency partners on is to not think about my business the way it runs today, but take some responsibility for helping deliver the vision that we've set out.
Right.
And they're perfect, tangible examples of this, right? We've had to sit down and really interrogate our SOWs. And why do I have so many creative resources and so few UX resources? If I'm actually going to sit up here and talk about building products and services in the digital space for athletes, does that feel right? Why do I have so many strategists on the media side and not enough data science? And so we're constantly pushing our agencies to think about the way our needs are changing and to ensure that they're sourcing talent and we're sourcing talent internally that allows us to deliver against what we think the future is. And I've put a lot of onus on them to think about their internal organizations and come back to me and say, here's how I can help deliver on what you're asking for versus here's what we did last year and we're going to rinse and repeat it.
Right.
So that's one of the ways we're thinking about talent. And secondarily, in the short term, we're looking at other interesting third parties. I think that there's been some great evolution in how marketers are serviced and where those services come from. So we've found some great startups who have delivered us development resources that have been extremely helpful for us. Other types of expertise as we think about consumer loyalty that have been helpful for us. Oftentimes we'll go directly to large scale platforms like your Snaps or Facebooks of the world, or we'll go directly to smaller startups that we've been working with and say, hey, you understand your platform, you understand your consumer, you understand the use cases they come to you for, help work with us directly. And now that doesn't cut out our agency partners, but it means there are more stakeholders in the room.
That's right.
And it creates a healthy
collaboration
tension.
is key.
Like I love it. I love when I have development resources out of the Valley fighting with creative resources, fighting with my media team, because now I have all kinds of different points of view, right? Coming with different types of expertise, and we believe that gets us to the best products. I love when I have a creative team at Snap arguing with my lead creative agency about what's the right way to engage the audience, because my agency knows the brand and Snap knows the platform, and we need to come in and understand what our objectives are holistically, and let's argue it out. And I think that type of healthy tension actually gets us to the best work. So I think in the short term, we are looking for new and different ways to get to the right mix of expertise in the room to deliver what we want to deliver. And in the long term, I'm pushing the agencies and saying, hey, we need different types of resources, and I'm pushing my own HR. We need different types of resources, different types of talent to come in and ensure that these visions that we're setting out aren't empty statements, but are things that we're actually working to deliver against.
Fair. We're closing up, so I want to hit you with two more questions, man. So one of our themes, if you heard us earlier, was about data privacy and arguably sort of respect for data, right? And respect for the consumer experience in exchange for the data that we're giving you, right? You've talked a lot about sort of extracting value from that data. So here we are. We have challenges around things like brand safety, fake news, data usage. So my question is, where does ethics play a role when you think about who you partner with?
It's extremely important. I think that, historically, things were simpler. Right? Like, if I wanted to go execute a TV buy, I kind of knew what ran on the network that I was buying. And even if it was run a network, I understood what the schedule looked like. And as long as I understood that, for the most part, you're good. Right? So as a marketer, you could kind of wash your hands or hope your agency handled it for you. I think today, the biggest change that marketers have to make is you have to be more investigative as far as the methodologies that your partners are using. You can't sit back and say, oh, okay, I'm just gonna run this and not understand the methodology behind the targeting capabilities. What types of blacklists are in place? What types of third-party verification and measurement are going to sit there to ensure that your brand is in safe environments? You can't kind of close your eyes to that. You have to take more ownership. And that requires digging into the weeds a little bit more, and you're seeing us do a lot more of that. I would say when it comes to consumers, consumers know the value of data. They're not blind to this. And so I think that as a brand, we're looking to set up the right value exchange. I think if the value exchange is right, if what you're delivering back to the consumer is something that they want and really want to engage with, then they'll be willing to share data in order to improve that experience. If you're not providing that value back to them, then they're gonna opt out, or they're gonna wanna opt out. And so I think we just have to, first and foremost, be concerned about the experience we're creating for them, the value that has for them. And if we do that, then I think the data exchange will be natural.
Fair. In closing, for the folks that are out here, what advice would you give us as we look to the future?
Good question. So I think the one big piece of advice that I'm always trying to push and trying to give to my team internally is to take the time to stop thinking about the world as it exists and start thinking about the world as you want it to exist and truly to plan and roadmap for how you get there. And be willing to take the risks around hypotheses around how you get there and prove that out one way or the other. Like, if you can think about the future that you want to create for your brand, the future that you believe your consumer needs, and you're willing to invest and to test and learn and to accept the failure that comes along the way, comes along the journey of getting there, you will get there. If you believe the world as it exists today is the world as it will exist tomorrow, you're never going to play an active role in realizing the future. And you're just going to be reactive. So I think that's something that we push for every day. I think it's something that every company should consider around what future they want to create and how do they play an active role in bringing it to life.
Fair. Mike, thank you, man.
My man.